Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Rumble. Yesterday, as I was answering your questions, live questions during the live streaming, you have to tell me how many times the name of Mahmood came in the chat, and you were asking me to invite him again to the show. And I sent him an email, and here we go together in today's live streaming. We're going to have a live conversation about the latest developments in West Asia, and especially in the context of the Palestinian conflict, and also the repercussions and the surrounding countries, let's say especially in Iran, in Syria, in Lebanon. Mahmoud, thank you so much, brother, for coming again to the show and accepting this invitation.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your wonderful viewers as well. It's good to be back.
Well, it's good to be back. Huh? It's good to have a live conversation with someone like yourself who has a great insight into the not only the, let's say, the international aspect of the politics, but also what is happening inside the countries. You are a part of the region, and I believe that this conversation would add lots of spotlight to difficult issues that the people still find it difficult to understand, especially when it comes to our countries there. But let's start with the bigger, let's say, politics on the international scene. A lot has happened since we last spoken together. We have several times a tit for tat between Israel and Israel. We had the assassinations. We had later the stronger, let's say, retaliation by Iran against Israeli installations, especially the airports. Now we are in an intersection where several reports say that Israel's response against Iran is imminent. So we have to expect it in the next few hours or in the next few days. In your understanding, how do you think Israel may respond this time, or attack against Iran? We have read lots of reports say that no, Israel will not attack the nuclear facilities, will not attack the oil refineries, etc., etc. But do you really think that Israel is a rational actor and it will act upon certain rules of engagement, or they will attack massively against Iran?
No, of course, Israel is not an irrational actor. Israel is an irrational death cult that has gone mad and reckless and is led by a sociopathic maniac who committed the genocide in accordance to international law and is still going ahead and committing war crimes in Gaza, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, in Yemen, and he is also threatening that he can reach everywhere across the world. So we're definitely not talking about a rational actor. We're talking about a reckless genocidal entity led by a sociopathic lunatic and backed by the United States administration and its proxies in Europe. And when I say proxies in Europe, I mean the establishment in Europe. It belongs to the United States administration. Post-World War II, the United States administration has been dictating everything that's happening in the region, and they are supporting Israel with no limits and no boundaries. Now, if we want to talk about the response, we have a couple of things to measure it upon. Firstly, we had an unprecedented attack coming from Iran on Israel in April, which was declared as retaliation to the assassination of the senior figures of Iran in Syria, in the consulate. And Iran attacked Israel with drones and with missiles. Some of them landed, some of them were intercepted. Then the United States had a certain tone at that time. Joe Biden told the Israel administration and Benjamin Netanyahu, we did well with the interception. That's a win for you. Take the win.
Yes.
Meaning, we helped you take the missiles down. That's a win for you. That's a lose for Iran. Take it. And they declared multiple times, we're not going to be participating with you in an attack on Iran, but we will defend you.
Defend you, yes.
And give you whatever you need. What happened after that attack from Iran? We haven't had a declared response from Israel. We had this firework thing across northwestern Iran That wasn't very significant. Israel did not take responsibility for that. And from an Iranian perspective, well, if it's not Israel and they didn't take responsibility, it's not significant, I don't have to respond. However, we did have the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh after that, meaning the level of deterrence that Iran tried to create with Israel and worked, it was very short-lived.
Yes.
So they did not attack something very significant to attract a very big attack on them. So they did not attack the oil facilities, the refineries. They did not attack the nuclear facilities. They did not attack significant military installations. From their perspective, we attacked someone who we and our allies consider to be a terrorist. Therefore, he's a legitimate target. Of course, they use that excuse to kill everyone they don't like. And then, but we did it in the heart of Tehran, one day following the inauguration of the new president, meaning you haven't dictated the level of deterrence. You haven't had a level of deterrence where you can tell us, I can attack you, but you can't attack me. So they want to show them that we can attack. Then you had Iran being in communication with the United States administration and with other countries as well, saying that the Americans promised us that, listen, the negotiations are almost done. Don't respond to Israel now. Give us a week. I know they assassinated him, and it's, against so many things, your sovereignty, security, honor, and all of that. But give us some time. That didn't work. And not only did that not work, it led to the wave of assassinations in Lebanon, with the massive assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah being the biggest blow that came to the resistance fronts. Now, some people started talking and they said that, well, Iran did not respond to the assassination of Haniyeh, therefore it led to the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. That's an argument. It could be true, it could be false, but there's an argument there that you haven't responded immediately. Therefore, you are dealing with an enemy, of course, that is reckless and constantly escalates. And they felt like they can move ahead and assassinate more figures. But we had that response. And that response almost had to come very quickly from Iran. Why? Because firstly, they started to face internal pressure. That's number one. So although we know they have the capacity to attack, but you started to have more calls from within Iran, like we need to attack instantly. The people who support the resistance in general, and they carried out that attack. And that attack was a very big attack. That was a very large blow for Israel. Over 90% of the Iranian missiles landed, and they targeted military posts, strategic locations. They landed, and Israel failed in their interception. But now Israel is saying that we want to respond.
Yes.
We want to respond. Based on the previous response that Israel had, we can establish that they will be doing something. Based on the US comments that were there in April, if we compare them to now, they are more sympathetic with Israel and less trying to dictate what's going to happen. So if you recall before, don't attack, this and that, they were a bit more keen on Israel not to attack. Now they're just saying, try and avoid, the nuclear facilities, try and avoid this and that. We hope it doesn't reach an all-out war, meaning the United States is interested in an Israeli attack on Iran. And they cannot act like they're not part of it. The United States is in the full picture. The question is, what is the formula that can be acceptable by the United States administration and Israel to be viewed as a response significant enough to bring back this Israeli deterrence, but at the same time not attract an Iranian response after it and drag us to a bigger war. The Israeli cabinet, it's a difficult decision, by the way, and that's why the cabinet hasn't decided yet. Yesterday there was a cabinet meeting and it didn't come out with any results. So they did not have a joint declaration that we know what we're going to attack. Usually,
Mm.
even if they keep it a secret or on a low, they'll say, we had a meeting, we decided how and when we're going to attack. They haven't even reached that, meaning it's a difficult decision for Israel. Why? Because anything you declare, firstly, will most likely attract a response,
Yes.
a response that is way more severe than what we saw so far. And what are you going to do after that?
And this is
But
the real question. Yes, this is the real question.
yeah,
The day after the Israeli attack on Iran.
the day after the Israeli attack on Iran, you're definitely going to have an Iranian retaliation. Meaning, if you have an Iranian retaliation after that, what is Israel going to do? Constantly go back and forth? And what's the United States position going to be? An observer who supports them only with weapons and helps intercept Iranian missiles? What's going to be, what are the targets going to be inside Iran? If we're going to be talking about Israel, for example, firstly, if they go and attack their nuclear facilities, you can say goodbye to Israel the next day. They will be destroyed the next day. However, if we take the nuclear or the oil fields, right? Who's the biggest consumer of Iranian oil?
China?
China. If Israel goes and does that to Iran, they are giving a blow to China directly. China so far has been somewhat diplomatic. You know, the more blatant or very visible position came from Russia. They supported Iran with air defense systems. We had back and forth Ilyushins to Iran. Senior figures were there. There's clearly a level of coordination because they are both aligned when it comes to Russia's conflicts as well. And from a Russian perspective, they know that when you talk about Israel, you're talking about the NATO too. So they will be seriously escalating if they go and respond against Iran. But again, they are enabled. And this enablement is coming by the United States administration, who always tell us they're looking to, instill democracy and stability and peace. But they are doing the absolute opposite by supporting this genocidal entity, expanding its war crimes and leading everyone to almost World War III.
I think we are on the path of no return. There is no middle ground. I don't think there is going to be a political settlement in the region. It seems like this is a high stake poker play nowadays that the Israelis have imposed on the entire region. For them, the stakes are too high to stop in the middle now, to accept a ceasefire, to accept any sort of de-escalation. I mean, even the nature of the escalation of Israel is absurd. They speak about escalation, escalate to de-escalate, and this type of escalate to de-escalate, if the power that you are escalating against is of a lesser, let's say, power than you, then maybe that could work. But when you are playing with Iran, escalate to de-escalate, I think this is only going to escalate and not to de-escalate at all. But there is I just want to give my opinion. I think that Israel is very creative in criminal activities. I mean, have you ever imagined that a pager's terrorist attack would happen? Something like this? No.
No.
I think this is just my gut feeling. I have no information about it. That they're going to do something creative. They probably going to wage a cyber attack again against Iran to turn off all the electricity, to shut down the nuclear program, but without a direct military response from the Israeli side. Something that the Iranians don't expect and aren't ready. This is just my speculation. I may be wrong about this. What do you think?
I think it's an option. I mean, when they had this pager attack against Hezbollah, don't forget that they said we will be using a type of weapon that we've never used before, and that
Yes.
was indeed a type of attack that they haven't carried out previously. Now, in terms of creativity when it comes to murder, they're creative. You know,
I
they're
swear
very
my jaw
creative with.
dropped when I heard of the Patriots attack. Like, how do they think many months and many years ahead to conduct such an attack, you know?
Yeah, they're very creative with mass murder.
Mm,
However, listen, the thing is, even if they come up with an attack that is similar to the pager attack with Iran, firstly, by having this pager attack against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and by the way, that wasn't just against Hezbollah; many civilians were targeted with that.
yes.
Um, well, they made themselves a little bit visible on that side, and countries started to take precautionary measures, not only in the region, but also globally. Like Venezuela started to take measures to do with pagers and safety. Now, Iran would obviously see that that might come. Plus, if Israel does carry out something similar in Iran, it would be very visible, unless they
Yeah.
decide to do it on a smaller scale. Now, the question is, and that's why they haven't really reached a decision on how to respond yet, is what is the scale, right, of response that would not attract another Iranian response? That is the question. If they go to the small fireworks that they potentially have done after the April attack of Iran, that could be acceptable from Iran. Why? Because firstly, it was very minor, insignificant. Israel did not take responsibility, and they did not cause damage,
Mm,
so people did not die, right? Or nothing significant was hit. So Iran can potentially swallow that. Mhm. But if you want to hit them back, and you want to hit them back hard, because the purpose here is to deter them, right? And create a new equation following the previous equation, because all of that's happening now is the creation of new equations. So
yes.
Iran and the resistance fronts reached a level where, as a matter of fact, that still is the case now. No one is intimidated by Israel. No one is intimidated by them in the region. They are receiving blows after blows. And although they go against those people who attack them, they come back even fiercer. They targeted Yemen, they targeted Iraq, they targeted Lebanon, massive blows to Hezbollah. What did that do? Now, Hezbollah are treating Haifa, the most major city in the northern part of Israel, exactly like they're treating Kiryat Shmone and Metullah, meaning dozens of missiles on a day-to-day basis. Sirens and explosions don't stop across throughout the day, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of more Israelis in bunkers, right, or in shelters, and on a day-to-day basis. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the calculation of Israel isn't its self-interest. So if it's in your interest or your declared objective, when did we have all of this escalation? When the Israeli government added the return of the Israelis to the north as part of the objectives of the war, because all of the three objectives of the war, ever since it began, were related to Gaza. Nothing was
Mhm.
related to the north. The only thing that they've been trying to do with the north and with the other fronts too is just to cut the tie. You know, we'll deal with you, but cut your support to Gaza. Now that they've done that with Lebanon, well, okay, if your aim is to get people back to the north, fine. How are you going to bring them? By increasing the level of attacks on Hezbollah. And clearly, although you had conducted attacks and taken down senior figures in Hezbollah, including the Secretary General, you haven't hurt the main thing that's aimed against you, their military capabilities, their ability to remain organized and continue the attacks against you, and consistently. It's like, don't underestimate when we say Hezbollah are targeting Haifa on a regular basis. That's not something light. That's something very big. Why? Because it's the biggest city in the north, and they reached central Israel. They reached Ma'ale Adumim. Ma'ale Adumim is the biggest settlement near Jerusalem, meaning all of Israel's under Hezbollah's range. So they have created this security tense situation, and a situation where people have lack of security all across Israel. How does that bode with your objectives of the war? And they're doing the same thing with Gaza.
Yes.
What are you doing with Gaza that brings you closer to achieve your objectives of the war? Nothing. All they want with all of this escalation is death trophies to say, okay, look, we targeted the senior figure, try and inflict as much damage on the other side and hurt them, but not necessarily stop the attacks against them. Because the first thing you would think about if you want to achieve your objectives, that's the main question, have you exhausted all diplomatic or political means to try and reach your objectives? No, you haven't. Of course not. They went all out on the violent side to try and reach their objectives, although it's been proven to them time after time that it does not work. Killing leaders does not work. Violence does not work. It only increases the resistance against you. But they don't seem to get it. It doesn't matter what you do. No one in Israel, at least when it comes to the people making the decisions, understands that violence doesn't get us anywhere. It only makes things worse for us. Some people do get it in Israel. It's not that there aren't many people who get it. There are some people who get it. But they are not in a position of power. And even if they try and give that advice to the prime minister or to people in power in Israel, and mind you, I'm talking about people who are profound Zionists who have been in the security establishment or the military establishment, like the previous head of the Mossad said, that's 10 months ago, we're on the way to oblivion if we continue down this path. People like Itzhak Brik, who I always quote. Again, you're talking about people who know what's happening, who have been in the military, in the security establishment in Israel, who warned the government. But again, Benjamin Netanyahu is on a mission, and he is being enabled. And he's being enabled by the United States administration, who are giving him everything that he needs to continue for his own sake. They're giving him the money, the weapons, and everything to continue. And that's why we're still saying this. They're talking about leverage and what have you. They're not using any of the leverage. How can you use leverage when you're giving him everything that he needs financially and militarily?
Guys, many of you already know Mahmoud, and I can see the comments. But for those who don't know, for example, our friend James says, where is Mahmoud from? He's from Palestine. And I already tagged his YouTube channel in the description. So if you open the description, you can see his YouTube channel and you can follow. And he's also doing daily live streaming. So you can follow his work. He's doing it, I think, at 10 p.m. Central European time or 9 p.m.
Around that time,
London. Yeah. So
right.
so you can hit him a follow, guys, and also watch, because he's very knowledgeable, and I think it's worth following up on the topics that he's addressing on his YouTube channel. And if you already like this content, we are over 1,000 people watching this between YouTube and Rumble. If you hit the like button, guys, this content reaches to more people. So this would be very appreciative as well. Mahmoud, we have spoken about Iran. We're talking about what's happening in Lebanon. I will touch on Lebanon more deeply. But yesterday, Smotrich, there was a new documentary published. I think this was by, what was the name of the channel? It was a joint French-German documentary. And in this documentary, he speaks about his vision of the greater Israel, and they will reach to Damascus. And to be honest with you, things started to make more sense, even for someone like myself, who said from the early stages of the Syrian war that this was a Zionist neocon plan against Syria. This has nothing to do about democracy, and they want to weaken Syria in this case. But now we have open talk about expansion to Damascus. We have the Jerusalem Post says that Lebanon is part of the Greater Israel Project, and that's why I say that I don't think that there is a way back for Israel from this. The path that they have taken here it's a zero sum game. And even if they stop at the moment, but in the near future or in a few years, they will try again to expand. So this is something that I think needs, according to many analysts in the region, tougher Iranian participation. And this is a criticism directed at Iran by many people who support the axis of resistance. And they say that the Iranian participation is still shy in this case. However, now the pro-Iranian people say, no, were it not for Iran, the resistance would not have all these capabilities. I understand this argument. However, we're speaking about direct Iranian intervention in a conflict that is clearly going to expand, and it already expanded to Lebanon, and it could expand to Syria. And this is a project of dismembering the axis of resistance. So the bigger player and the bigger brother in this axis of resistance is Iran. So sooner or later, if I'm saying, hypothetically, if the allies of Iran are weakened, and we're talking about Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria, Yemen, then the end goal is going to be Iran. So why would not Iran intervene now instead of waiting for the Israelis to come step by step for them? So this is also criticism. I think it's legitimate for the people to ask this type of questions. Why would Iran wait for Israel to hit now, and why not doing a preemptive strike again? Because Israel has done a preemptive attack against Israel, against the neighboring countries in 1967. They called it a preemptive attack, occupied vast swaths of Arabic territories, right, since 1967 war. So Iran is basically playing, it's part of a rules of engagement, or following rules of engagement or rules or international law that its enemy doesn't recognize these rules of engagement. It's not playing with the same rules. So each side are playing with different rules.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on a couple of things. I'll comment on each and every one of them. Firstly, you said about Smotrich and his comment that the whole region is ours, and take it bit by bit, and then we'll reach Jordan and what have you. And when it comes to Damascus, he said that Jerusalem, according to him, Jerusalem's borders is up to Damascus, so that's only Jerusalem. So let alone Israel. You reach. I don't know where he wants to reach. Maybe Pakistan or something. But that's not new. I mean, we've been speaking about that. These people are expansionists. Israel is a neo-expansionist colonialist entity. They have the ideology of our borders end with where the foot of our last soldier stands on. So this is Israel. So it's nothing surprising here. The surprising thing is the people who don't see it that way. Then we're going to go to Iran. Firstly, Iran has always been a target ever since the United States started to have these wars in the Middle East, in Afghanistan and Iraq. They knew they were next, and they were in a far weaker position. And when they were in a far weaker position, they were still supporting the resistance. So you're talking about a country that's willing to take the sacrifice. This is we need to understand that these people are willing to sacrifice. It's embedded in their belief system and their ideology and morals that we need to support these people, and they're willing to pay the price. Now, when it comes to the response and or lack thereof, and the level of the response and the rules of engagement, I think the most important thing is to view the actual matter from what's happening, based on the whole full picture, not based out of emotions. Like from an emotional perspective, who doesn't want Israel to receive a blow so that this apartheid regime can be completely dismantled once and for all, and someone to call for equality once and for all in Palestine, where everyone can receive equal rights? Yeah, I'd love that, see that tomorrow. But it's not about our hopes and our emotions. It's about reading what's happening. First and foremost, Iran has proven That's for those who criticize. And hey, listen, everyone is entitled to speak. It's open, everyone talks about whatever they want to talk about. Fine. However, you criticize Iran. Firstly, who's criticizing Iran? Who? Which country is criticizing Iran? This is my question here. And if you're criticizing Iran, what's your country doing? I'll give you the answer. No one is doing what Iran is doing. So that's number one. Any criticism, at least be humble, be slightly humble, because Iran is the only country officially recognized globally that is doing what is doing for the Palestinian people. That's number one. Secondly, if this country has proven to us all, time after time, that they support the resistance unconditionally, no matter who's there, because they have it's embedded in their principle and value system. Not only that, they shook the whole world by attacking Israel twice directly, but they are doing it based on their calculations, what they want to achieve, where they want to go, knowing their weaknesses, knowing their ties, because it's not only about Iran, it's about other countries too, and taking it slowly but surely. What are we seeing? We are not seeing any weakness coming from the resistance side and from Iran, are we? Look at Hamas in Gaza. The Palestinian resistance, 1 year into this genocide, into this mass destruction in Gaza, with the equivalent of 5 nuclear bombs landing on Gaza, they are still fighting Israel. As a matter of fact, I read an article yesterday or the day before from Israelis fighting in Gaza saying that Hamas are fighting us like day one, in terms of equipment, in terms of bravery, in terms of confrontation. They are still launching strategic missiles on Israel. They are still very powerful. Okay, if we have that in the supposedly weakest link when it comes to the sides resisting Israel, Hezbollah, again, look at what's happening on the ground. They targeted, they killed the senior figures, the top figure. What's happening on the ground? They are intensifying their day-to-day responses against Israel, and Israel has no military answer to the military operations coming from Hezbollah against them. So you haven't stopped Gaza, you're not going to stop Lebanon. You haven't stopped Yemen, even though you had massive attacks over there, you didn't stop them. You didn't stop the Iraqi resistance. You did not stop Iran, because after they did that assassination and thought that of Haniya, and then they thought, okay, well, the Iranians are speaking with the Americans now. The Americans fooled them. They told them, we're about to have the ceasefire and what have you. And now they're not going to do anything. But they went and then they attacked them. What is all of that showing you? That these people are not going anywhere, but they will not shy away from confronting this genocidal entity. Meaning, I don't want war. This is the message that I'm getting from Iran. I am not seeking war. However, if you attack me, I won't shy away from attacking you. And when they attack, they will tell you, I carried out the attack. It was in response, in accordance to UN Charter Article 51, and it's done. And it was a response. And if you attack me back, I'm going to destroy all of your infrastructure. It's very simple, very calculated, very logical, and in accordance to international law. Now, you said, why are they playing by the book when the other side is not playing by the book, which is very interesting. Firstly, they have, anyone opposing Israel, they have an excuse to conduct and inflict the same destruction on Israel like Israel inflicted on Gaza and in Lebanon. That's firstly. Why? Because they haven't abided by anything. And if people want to respond to them, then I can go all out on you. And I believe, and I said that before, if we had a side that genuinely intimidated Israel and told them, if you do X with Gaza, or if you try and level parts of Gaza, we'll level parts of Israel, then Israel wouldn't have necessarily done what it's doing. Okay. Why are they still abiding by that if their enemies are using every single inhumane act and every despicable war crime, targeting children in Gaza, targeting hospitals, schools, everything? Interesting. Okay, a couple of things. Firstly, when Iran responds as a country, all of their responses came following an attack that they considered to be on them. Meaning, Iran did not attack Israel for the sake of Gaza. They supported the resistance, they supported the people fighting, but they did not fight on their behalf. Likewise with Hezbollah. Even in 2006, Iran did not participate for them. They supported them. Meaning, Iran is still playing at it from a state perspective. They are genuinely looking at it from a global law thing, international law, UN Charter, right to respond, all of these things, to be legit, although their opponents are not respecting the legit side. It's important. Why? Because they still have consideration for the public opinion and how people are thinking and how people are viewing it. The world in general, what are they seeing now? They are seeing a country called Israel, supported by the United States, by the European countries, committing the worst atrocities and crimes against humanity in Gaza. And they're seeing a country, although despite all of the propaganda and everything, only targeting their military targets in Israel. What does that tell the people who are observing? Well, hold on a second. You've been telling me that these people are the bad people, are the barbaric people, and we should change the regime. But it's actually us who are supporting a criminal, barbaric entity that's committing war crimes and killing children and all of the atrocities that they're committing in Gaza and Lebanon. And it's their opponents, the Ayatollah regime that they always tell us about, who are actually considering everything from a humanitarian perspective and considering everything when they attack Israel, although there is even an argument about the status of civilian inside of Israel. And the argument is, well, most of you are reservists who have weapons and who can go and fight and kill, okay? That's a separate story, but it can be involved in the argument. That is showing that Iran is a champion of human rights, as in without any, exaggeration. As a country, they are championing human rights. How? By firstly sticking up to what's right, secondly being legit, thirdly punishing the genocidal entity as they are entitled by international law. And who is not doing that? The countries that are supposed to be protecting us. The countries that you were talking about Syria before.
Yes.
Weren't they telling us the people of Syria are suffering and we need to help them and we need to this and we need to that? And even Israel was telling us about people suffering in Syria. Didn't we ask ourselves, why are the people ignoring the ongoing suffering of the Palestinians, including their oppressors worried about the Syrian people? And which Syrian people are they worried about? Exactly. Israel worried about human rights in Syria, right? So it's showing you exactly where things stand. I mean, people call this war, and I agree with that, the all-revealing war, or al-kashifa in Arabic.
All masks are
It's
off.
revealing everything. All the masks are off. Who are the barbaric medieval criminals who are committing genocide, who's supporting them, who are the genuine people standing for human rights, who supports them, and where they stand. All the masks are off, everything is visible. It only takes someone to observe what's happening. Now, from an Iranian perspective, they are still considering all of that, and they genuinely don't want an all-out war. If they wanted an all-out war, they could have gone on an all-out war, but they genuinely don't want it. And by having this constant delay, what are they doing? Apart from shifting global public opinion, they are making the meal very well done. Everything is brewing properly.
Mm.
So now people are telling you, not only, firstly, the fact that we're having this debate. Like, what is the debate? How comes Iran isn't hitting them harder? You know,
Mm.
who thought you'd reach a level where, and it's not just me and you here. I'm here. People in comments, people who watch and stuff. Well, why are they doing it? Why are they not targeting civilians like the Israel's targeting civilians? Who imagined that you would reach to a level where you would try and ask Iran or hope that Iran would attack us? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And why is that all festering? And why is that being revealed the way it is being revealed now? It's because the United States administration enabled Israel to get away with murder for so long.
I agree.
If they had any ounce of care for Israel, they would have stopped them much earlier.
I think it is also too late for the United States to stop Israel. I think the US political, military, financial establishment has been so compromised by the Israeli lobby and the political money in the federal banking system in the US and there are so many aspects in the US that I truly believe that the US will go to the end with Israel in this, and this is going to be very, very dangerous, not only for Israel and also for the United States presence in the region, entire region we're speaking of. And when Israel is threatening with retaliation now or response or attack against Iran, the Arabic countries in the region, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they all met now with the Iranians and they said, we're not part of this. We're not going to give any support to the Israelis. They want to protect themselves. It like being an American ally in the region has become dangerous now. It's Americans aren't guaranteeing any security for the countries that they have stationed in the other way around. It's becoming like a more of a burden on them to have American forces in their own countries at the moment. But there is something controversial here, Mahmoud. If you can tell us this in like 5 minutes. You said who is attacking Iran, who is criticizing Iran, and you named some of the countries. Then those countries are actually supporting Israel in its barbaric military conduct against the Palestinians, against the Lebanese. And if they continue murdering all the Lebanese people, all the Palestinian people, all the Syrian people later, and all the Iraqis and all the Iranians, they will not blink an eye. They will not do anything about it, right? They will give unconditional support to Israel. But we have also an elephant in the room, and some people in the Arabic world, especially after the assassinations that happened in Lebanon, in the Arab world, they were celebrating, right, in these assassinations. Why do you think there is this rift in, I'm not saying that the majority, I'm saying, but there are people, and those are loud voices, especially on social media platforms, celebrated the assassinations in Hezbollah. And there is this very big lie that Hezbollah went to Syria and killed they say, according to them, the Sunni babies and our women, they raped them there. And this is the talk that they are raising on social media, that, yeah, we're with Palestine, but we are against Hezbollah and we celebrate their... How is it possible that during such important, vital, as you mentioned, this is in my opinion, this is the war that will decide the fate of the region for 100 years ahead of us. How can some people see that this is an Israeli-American joint aggression not only against these groups, it's against the people of the region. Why people are so blinded, it bothers me.
It's not surprising. It's not the first time in history that people were very blind to something that was very righteous. It's happened previously many times, but I think we need to observe it and analyze it in a way that we don't take things out of context. We don't give the other side too much credit, and we realize exactly who they are. Firstly, if some of you, we're considered part of the younger generation, by the way. But if you ask a bit of the older generation, before, okay, his name is Haganah. That's the thing. Bots. Firstly, and I'll get to the example of the bots, okay, because there are many Zionist bots operating, pretending to be Arab, and we spoke about them many times. They're not even worthy of looking at. However, if we want to talk about this, firstly, there's a sectarian element. When did we start hearing about sectarianism? When, after certain Shia movements, non-sectarian Shia movements, but they are Shia in their sect, okay, started to have certain successes against Israel, and after the United States started to invade Iraq. Why? Because they wanted to divide the populations, and they started to have these people funded, given money to only go out there and spew sectarian venom. Okay, going against their own religion, and at the same time, really, because every sectarianism is anti-Islam in terms of religion itself. As a matter of fact, in religion, in Islam, you're ordered not to divide into sects. But that's a separate story. We can go ahead there. We'll have a theological debate. However, so we started to have this campaign that was deliberate, funded, supported by the United States and some Arab countries. And not only that they funded, they make it operational. And you saw parts of that operation in Syria, likewise in other locations where this operation was given the American blessing, right? So, firstly, they spoke about Iraq and it's a sectarian war. And what do you mean sectarian war? Saddam Hussein himself, agree or disagree with him, he had Christians and Sunnis and Shias in his government. That's number one. Again, agree or disagree with him. Secondly, in Syria itself, you have people from all sects opposing and supporting the government. So what are you talking about exactly? But they wanted to give it this image of sectarianism. Firstly, it's difficult for some people to admit that they have been misled by propaganda when it comes to Syria. Okay, there has been a lot of propaganda after the what started as a revolution in Syria, then later became civil war, supported and funded by many Arab countries and Western countries who have no interest in what's good for the Syrian people, and sure as hell we're not looking for democracy because they don't have democracy in their own states, let alone Israel supporting people in Syria. How absurd is that? Okay, what did Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah himself say about Syria? He said, I support the government, but not for the destruction of Syria. And I support the opposition, but not for the destruction of Syria. He said many times as well, we support certain reforms and having democratic reforms in Syria, but we know what's happening in terms of campaign, who's supporting these takfiri movements, who consider everyone to be an infidel, supported by Western intelligence agencies and Israel in many cases. And it doesn't require a lot of research. They've been saying, thank you, Netanyahu. So yes. How do you want me to sympathize with you if you say thank you to a butcher? How? Plus, some of these people, and again, I am not discrediting everyone who opposes the government, and I am not standing with the government. So it's very clear. However, we are analyzing what's happening here. Many people who spewed venom and propaganda that was there primarily to instill sectarian violence and rip Syria apart, right? Regardless of the government, but rip Syria as a state apart and the people so that they can go into bloody sectarian civil wars from here for several more decades. They are still there. Some people, you have people acting like journalists, telling you Hezbollah is attacking these locations as a response to Israel. And when they come and talk, and I monitor some of them, it's like you're bringing nothing. They're bringing nothing on the ground. Oh, there's been an attack. Hospital people attack. Where are the people? I can't see anyone. But anyway, it's happening in Syria. So when it comes to this project, many people were fooled into the narrative that Hezbollah was there to attack and kill people. And it's like, firstly, who are you putting yourself with? Who are you siding with? ISIS? Hezbollah went to target ISIS and a couple of movements who were there killing Syrians. Do you know what I mean? Talk about anti-terrorism.
Yes.
So they were there doing that. Are you siding with them? Okay, that's an argument. Secondly, let's say you disagree with Hezbollah's participation altogether in Syria. That's another debate. Why do you interfere in Syria? Okay, let's take it as that. Do you have the same argument for the opposing side? So do you oppose Turkish participation in Syria, for example? Do you oppose Saudi participation in Syria? If you are consistent with that, like that, then fine. But you can't say I oppose Hezbollah's participation, but the Saudi participation is blessed, for example, when it's supporting outright organizations that are very similar to Israel, funny enough, you know, in the way they try and impose their will and act in the name of religion, and are established and funded by Western intelligence agencies. So some people still fall into that. And again, I'm not sure how effective it is to have even have a conversation with anyone unless you are genuinely willing to sit with them and try and explain things, and there's someone in front of you who's willing to take back and forth, and again speak from a perspective of, or from a point of view that I'm not entirely 100% right, but neither are you, and we're just debating and talking. And when it comes to the participation in Syria, you've had a lot of misinformation. I was misinformed at one point as to what was happening. I had to dig further to elaborate and find out exactly what was happening there, and realize that I wasn't being told the truth. And let me tell you one thing. The only thing that it takes is look who is supporting the other side and compare that position when it comes to Palestine. And then ask yourself, why are they doing that there, and for the sake of who? We support all of the Syrian people who love their country and want what's best for their country, right? And no one can come and say as if, you know, you're against the Syrian people, or by supporting this, you don't support that. Plus, yes, it shows you a lack of strategic vision as well. Let's say we take the argument and the propaganda and believe everything that has been said about Hezbollah and Syria, but they're fighting Israel.
Yes.
Let's say they've done something in Syria, which I don't agree that they have done, by the way. There's a lot of propaganda about it. But let's say you believe that. Can't you have a strategic view? How can you? Plus, it's all a show, right? They want to say it's all a show. Is it all a show? And the top figure in that movement sacrificed with his life? Is that a show as well? Plus, you go against them when they are sacrificing themselves for the sake of Gaza. And what have you done for Gaza?
Yes.
Nothing. Nothing.
In the contrary, they are nowadays. Some of them are even calling Netanyahu a hero for his operations in Lebanon. And I would just like to, because you mentioned Syria, I would just like to make a quick comment. William Van Wagenen is an American author and is going to publish a new book called The Origins of the Dirty War Around Syria. And I wrote a foreword for his book. And I would like to read to you this foreword because it matches clearly your perspective of
Please,
what
yeah.
happened in Syria. I said, and it also my perspective of Syria, of what happened, it is directly influenced by what was happening in Palestine previously. So this is the foreword that I wrote. I said, as a third generation descendant of Armenian genocide survivors, I was raised in a deeply politicized environment where the memory of that atrocity was ever present. In my community, the younger generation is continually reminded of the horrors of the genocide, and taught the importance of resilience and survival. This upbringing instilled in me a strong sense of justice and a desire to contribute to a fairer world. It is perhaps one of the reasons why I became so deeply engaged with the Palestinian struggle for freedom, following the Second Intifada closely and being profoundly affected by it. However, the pivotal events that truly shaped my political perspective were the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 2006, and the onset of the regime change war in Syria in 2011. What few people know is that in 2011, I initially viewed the Arab Spring and the protests in Syria through a different lens. During the early months of the crisis, I was cautiously optimistic, hoping that the protests might lead to positive political change. With a background in international relations and diplomacy and a specialization in Middle Eastern politics, I believe that political liberalization could be a step forward, both for Syria and for the broader region. Like many at the time, I was influenced by the coverage of Al Jazeera, which held considerable credibility, particularly in Syria. I even supported the return of the exiled opposition figure, his name was Haitham Manna, believing he could play a role in a peaceful transition of power. However, my perspective shifted dramatically after the Jusr Shughur massacre in June 2011, when 120 government personnel were brutally killed by elements of the so called unarmed opposition. This event marked a turning point for me. I began documenting the atrocities committed by sectarian insurgents and soon realized the stark contrast between the political rhetoric presented on television by well dressed politicians and the actual goals of these insurgents, who sought or seek the establishment of a so called Islamic caliphate. The unfolding violence and sectarian motivations brought back painful memories of the Armenian genocide, which my family had passed down through generations. Hearing about such crimes was one thing, but witnessing similarly horrific acts in real time on smartphones was a chilling wake up call. Compounding the realization was the blatant involvement of foreign powers, the same forces responsible for the oppression of Palestinians and the occupation of Iraq, now supporting the insurgents in Syria. This prompted me to question the motives of these so called friends of the Syrian people. Could they could the very powers who had a hand in oppressing Palestinians and Iraqis truly have the best interests of the Syrian people at heart? It didn't take long for me to reach a conclusion. From the moment on, I knew where I stood, and the decision has shaped my path ever
Mm,
since. As this is the first
mm,
time I read this in public, and it's very clear. It was very clear for me after a few months that this was about destabilizing Syria for the greater Israel
mm,
project, and now the talk is very open from the Israeli officials, and I truly think that my position was on the side of the Palestinians and in the context of this struggle of power over the region. And I don't have any regrets after 13 years of the Syrian conflict for standing where I stood. Just quick respond to Lebanese Tips podcast. He says, Kevork confirms Hezbollah is finished in his podcast, yet when another person debunks by presenting a view, they poison your minds with twisted thinking. I think you either don't English. I think your English is very bad, or you're just making up shit because I really don't know what is he talking about. Seriously, Mahmoud Habibi,
حبيبي.
I'm very First of all, I'm very happy to have you on the show. Happy that
I'm happy to
this
have you
has
as
ended
well.
with a smile. I hope that the smile and the laughter would be back soon to the faces of the Palestinians and to the Lebanese people, to the Syrians, to the Iraqis, everyone who has suffered a lot by this brutal empire that is called the U.S. and through its tools in the region nowadays. I call for unity for everyone. I think only united action could stop this mayhem and the suffering of the people, and people like yourself, very intellectual and very reasonable. And it's very important for people like yourself to have a larger voices. Guys, his YouTube is already tagged in the description for those who just joined. Please also hit him a follow. I would really appreciate that. Thank you, Habibi, for coming to the show again.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to having you again on my channel. And thank you so much for all of the viewers for tuning in, and we'll hopefully do it again soon.
He already did the close-up, guys, for me today. He's also host of a wonderful
There
show,
we go.
so he knows how to end up
I
the
did the
show.
job for you.
Guys, I will see you on Monday at the same time, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your family, and peace be upon you, Mahmood. Salam.
Peace. Take care. Salam.